Hello, my name is Mikei the Mighty, and thanks for listening and watching my video. This is Mikei Talk, and today I got a special guest. I have with me MMOInks,
Hey, thanks for having me.
and also today we have a person who have not been on. He was on one of the very first Mikei Talks, and that is Artic. Welcome back, Artic.
Hey, how you doing?
And so today we're actually going to be discussing a number of different issues, but let's start off with something positive. Super Adventure Box came back. Now, initially, last two times it was out back when it was first released, I actually wasn't a big fan of Super Adventure Box. I wasn't too fussed about its release coming back. However, I have spent a lot of time playing SAB, primarily because obviously there's a lot of achievements in the game right now, and it is quite kind of fun. I've actually been enjoying Tribulation Mode, which is kind of interesting, but it'd be interesting to see what your guys' thoughts are. Obviously, they released it back on April 1st as, the April Fools, which is what they did initially. So let's start off, Inks. What's been your reaction to how, SAB coming back, and have you been playing a lot of it?
Yeah, I've been playing quite a bit. I haven't done as much Tribulation just yet, but I do plan to farm kind of each of the zones and try and earn my green weapons and try and earn the yellow weapons, which, admittedly, that's a lot of work. But I've always enjoyed SAB quite a bit. Not the
Hmm.
biggest fan of World 2 Zone 2. It's probably my
Yeah.
least favorite out of all of them. But other than that, I like the Storm Wizard fight that's at the very end of World 2 Zone 3, and
Yes.
just a
Yeah.
lot of the little, I grew up in the age of Mario and Zelda and games like that and platforming games in general, and so I think Super Adventure Box has a lot of appeal in that regard for me.
And what about you, Arctic? Me and Arctic have been doing Tribulation Mode together, which I found it a hell of a lot more fun than if you try and do it on your own. Just because if you get stuck, someone else can show you a different way. But yeah, Arctic, what about you? Did you like it back in the day, or like in 2013?
Yeah, when it actually came out the first time, I still remember it was on somebody's site that they said SAB, and they like dug it up from Guild Wars 2, and nobody knew what it was. And people on Reddit were like guessing, like, "What do you think it is? What do you think it is?" And when it came out that it was like this mode, everyone was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" And I remember everyone was going absolutely nuts for it. It was so much fun. And I was gonna say it was really funny when you said earlier that you didn't have too much fun the first time, and I was wondering if you were playing with other people during that time. Were you?
Not so much. I don't think the LFG tool was as good as well. There wasn't an LFG tool back then, and so you weren't really able to get into parties as easily. And I went around on my own, and yeah, it was just I remember watching a video that Wooden Potatoes did where he had a ridiculous amount of lives he took to actually get through the tribulation mode, and I just looked at it and thought, I'm not even going to bother with that. That's just way too hard for me. Now that I've played a little bit more, we did some jumping puzzle stuff in the guild hall that actually made me a far better player at jumping puzzles, and I found it a lot more interesting and fun this time. And generally, yeah, it's just there's a lot more things. Obviously you get guild hall rewards, and people have been enjoying that and being quite creative with the guild hall rewards. But yeah, I guess the achievement points, the fact you get a hell of a lot of achievement points as someone who does have quite a lot, and I actually had done no achievements for SAB. I've been like, right, okay, I'm going to get in there, I'm going to play a lot of these and get a lot of these achievements. And it helps having the LFG tool this time, so you can pug up pretty easily. I'm finding I'm enjoying it a lot more, but yeah, primarily because I'm having people to play with. And it's been the same experience that you see some of our other guildies have been like, you see them in guild chat moaning because they can't get past a certain bit, but when they're in a party, you just experience a lot more, have a lot more fun. I mean, Inks, what about you? Are you tempted to try and do some Twitch streaming with SAB Tribulation Mode? Or are you worried that your language might get a bit heated?
I think there definitely is this worry of how I express myself when I'm frustrated and want to pull my hair out. But yeah, definitely, like next week when I'm playing when I start to stream Guild Wars 2 again, it'll be PvP and SAB mainly for the type of content that I'm going to be putting out, at least for a little while it's around.
I mean, do you feel that, we talk about that they brought back SAB? It was one of the things that everybody, well, I say everybody, there was a huge amount of people in the community asking for the return of SAB. You always saw like SAB or riots in like the points of interest in guild chat video, in the comment section. Do you feel that it's brought back a lot of positivity to the game, which was, the community was on a real low after last week. Do you feel that it's brought back a lot of, happiness and general excitement back to the game?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, at least for the group of players who really like SAB, and like you said, there are quite a few of them out there who really enjoy this game mode. I think that it's a big positive step, at least for the time being, for these players to really get in, enjoy something different to do other than the Heart of Thorns maps or fractals or whatever they've been doing in Guild Wars 2, or maybe not have been doing in Guild Wars 2 recently. I think this gives them a reason to not only get old rewards, which they brought back, but try and get some of the new orange skins and the dailies and, like you said, achievements that you just never did. This gives people a reason to log in and try to achieve these things with Super Adventure Box back.
And I would also say there is a huge amount of the player base that actually have never even played SAB before, because think of all the free-to-play players that came in. I've experienced a lot of people that when you say, oh, SAB's back, they're like, what's SAB? What about you, Artic? Have you got any sort of any thoughts on this?
Yeah, it shocks me when people say, "Oh, what's SAB?" and I'm like, "Oh, we're partying up right now, and we're gonna go do some." I loved it, and it's just it's a little fun, positive thing. There's no, even though tribulation mode is a little bit crazy, and you do maybe want to rip your hair out a little bit, it is really fun. It's a challenge, and then even if you don't do that and you do the infantile or normal mode, you just have so much fun. You get the little I guess Zelda sounds when you get an item, do 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 do,
Yeah.
and you just it's fun. I love it. It brings back my childhood. It's great. I love SAB.
I will ask you this now, both of you. We'll start with Inks. I mean, do you feel that this should be a permanent fixture, or do you feel that once a year for 3 weeks is right to have it in there? And one of the reasons being is because of this challenging content, and because there isn't really anything like this, for 1 to 5 man content. Okay, you might have fractals, but really you're not actually fighting too many bosses. It's more jumping puzzle style challenges. There's not really anything else in the game that fills this particular sort of hole right now. So do you feel that 3 weeks is enough time per year, or do you feel it should be more of a permanent fixture?
I think it should last about a month. Right now we're getting it until the 19th. I really wish they would do it until the end of the month, just to give a little bit of extra time. Certainly there's going to be people like myself who make sure that they do the daily every single day in order to
Yeah.
do those achievements to get some of the orange weapons, the Kaiser snake weapons. But it should also give a little more time for those who just like to take a relaxing approach to it. Play it every other day, or maybe they can only log on twice a week or something and play for a shorter period of time. So I think a month long would be much better. Ideally, for me, having it permanent would be perfect, but I think that also diminishes some of the specialness of SAB if it's a permanent thing. And on top of that, we don't know how long we're going to have to wait until we see a World 3. Certainly, there's people who have never played coming into the game now, and there's tons there. But for those of us who were here 2 years ago and did play it, not having that third world means we have to wait at least another year, but maybe even longer until we see that.
Well, as I said, I never really played this, so this was, playing World 2 was, that content was new for me. And I remember, Arctic, when we defeated the Storm Wizard, which was actually quite an engaging fight, sort of interesting mechanics. What was it you said it reminded you of? I can't remember what you said.
Storm Wizard?
Yeah, what did you say the fight was reminiscent of?
It was reminiscent of fighting, I don't know, Zaitan, Morgemoth. It was such a difficult and engaging fight.
And that's what's been really interesting. This has sort of all come out of the developers, the free time that they've been doing. And, if you watch the guild chat, they did explain that it would take the developers a sustained amount to create a new world. And you've got to say, well, is that going to be well spent if it's only available for 3 weeks of the year? In that regard, it's, sort of hard to say, well, we can afford to use the developer time when they've got Living World and other expansion they're working on. We would just say as well, some of the weapons I always enjoy, the Super Adventure Bot skins that you get. I don't know if you, Arctic and me heard the Warhorn, the Kaiser Warhorn. I don't know if you've heard that, Inks.
No, I know it makes a special sound, but I haven't heard what it is yet.
Oh, it's when you listen to it, it's rather obnoxious. It is going to be hilarious if you start seeing a huge Zerg running around with all these different noises, but it's an interesting sound that it comes out, especially. But let's move on to a slightly more, sort of, you could say cynical, but also sort of have ArenaNet made a slight PR misstep in the fact that last week, obviously, they had some negative news in the fact that they were postponing, they say indefinitely, but whether or not that will happen, the new legendary weapon development, apart from the short bow. And do you feel that with SAB being such a success and quite good news for the community, do you feel that if they could have announced SAB to cover up some of the negativity? Because I know a lot of people after that news were on a real low. And, having something like this, or even, the way they announced it, Mike O'Brien, I'll give him credit, he was very open with this. He didn't have to be open. He didn't even have to say anything that they weren't even working on any other legendary weapons, but he was open and honest and frank. But do you feel that this was a slight mistake from ArenaNet in how they went about it? What's your view on their announcement and obviously the follow-up in the same, with the week after having the good news of SAB?
Yeah, I definitely give Mo some bonus points for the transparency. We're seeing a lot more transparency recently from ArenaNet. That's a very positive thing. That's something the community wants. They want to know a lot more of what's going on. So that's great. Unfortunately, there's some people in the community that believe and perceive that the news we get from ArenaNet is like a roller coaster. And certainly it plays on your emotions a lot of the times when you get really negative news and you're low, then you get very good news like SAB and you're high, and then they deliver bad news. So it's this up and down constantly with the game over the last 3 years. And I think the better way to approach this from a PR perspective is they should have done a guild chat or a blog post, something where they talk about the spring quarterly, what's coming in the spring quarterly, deliver that news, talk about SAB coming back, and that they're going to have Kaiser weapons and the old achievements, etc. Talk about Chuka and Chumpawat, the new short bow, maybe even show it off a little bit. Give us all that good, and then at the end, give rational reasons as to why legendaries will no longer continue and deliver the bad news. And then this way, when content creators or when people in the community are discussing their feelings about the news, sure, there will still be lots of people who are very vocal about the negativity of not getting legendaries for a very long time, if ever again. I mean, I really do think they'll come back eventually, but who knows when that's going to happen. But then there's all this other good news. Other people can actually point to things and say, but we got SAB, but we're getting this in the spring quarterly, et cetera, et cetera. And there just wasn't any of that. It was just, here's a very bad bombshell. The community explodes in outrage. And then you wait another week or two for SAB to come back and at least make some people temporarily happy.
Yeah. I also feel that, you can go back like a few weeks beforehand. They released Wing 2 of the raid, which was also really well received. But then you also had a bit of a backlash because the content that they were bringing out in the Raid 2 was fantastic content, great lore and story, and the fact that the audience was so, players were so upset that, if you were a non-raiding person, and, Arctic, this would probably be a good question for you, you obviously as someone who doesn't raid too much, you'd missed out on seeing some quality lore. You played Guild Wars 1, about some of the story in that, and so they had some great story to do with the Massart, and the White Mantle, and really a lot of people love that part. And you're not ever going to be able to experience it if you're not a good enough raider. So how did you feel, yourself on that, Artic?
So, it is actually very upsetting because I played Guild Wars 1 from the first year that they released, and I loved it. I had my whole entire life playing Guild Wars 1. Not whole life, but a very good portion of my life playing Guild Wars 1. I loved it. I loved Gwen, I loved factions, I loved Nightfall, and so I followed all the lore. I'm a huge PvEer, so I loved it. And then when Guild Wars 2 came out, I followed all the lore. I keep doing all the living worlds. I bought the expansion. I loved it. So raids is a little bit more difficult for me. I do have a tight schedule now that I'm working, so it's more difficult for me to find time to do raiding. And then on the weekends when I have other things to do, or I could raid, I kind of have to do my previous engagements first, so I don't have all the time to raid. So I kind of wish, like SAB, they would have an infantile mode for raids. Of
Yeah.
course, you'd get severe reduction on rewards, and maybe even you wouldn't even get the legendary armor pieces and leave that for people who could do real raiding. I'm fine with giving that up if I can get my lore. I love the lore. I always follow it through, so it was a little bit upsetting, and yeah, I did have to watch it on YouTube, and I watched the videos when people finished the third boss in the second raid. I think his name is
Matthias or Matthias,
Matthias, yeah. So after they finished that and they got the cutscene, I watched it on YouTube, so I didn't get to experience it myself, and it kind of stinks. So I kind of wish that maybe there was an infantile mode, and then even for me, so if I ever did get some free time to do an actual full raid, if I did the infantile mode, I would know the mechanics of the boss. Even though the mechanics of the boss wouldn't fully kill me in infantile mode, I know they would in a regular mode, but at least I would know how to handle the boss and how to go about defeating him. So I don't know, that's just my 2 cents. I would love to experience the lore for myself. Even though it is unrelated to the Guild Wars lore. I know that Crystal Reed, she's said that the lore in the raids doesn't have to do with where they're going with Living Story, but it's still just lore. I'd still like to experience it no matter what.
Well, it was a good part of Guild Wars 1, wasn't it? It was a good part of the story.
Yeah, it was.
And what about you, Inks? Did you? Because I'm guessing since you've said as well that you haven't achieved, like me, we haven't actually got past Lothazar yet, so we haven't even had a chance to experience that. Is that a bit disappointing for you that you've not been able to see that cutscene and that a large part of the player base won't experience this lore?
So for me personally, it doesn't bother me too much that I haven't experienced it yet. I know I will eventually, and I certainly don't have a problem with going to YouTube and watching some content creators' version of here's the cutscene, here's the lore, here's what I think about it. I love those kinds of videos, and selfishly, that's great for content creators. However, I do think that there's a large part of the audience that doesn't necessarily, not only do they not want to leave the game, which is perfectly understandable, they want it to be delivered in the game. And even though it's not tied to Living World Season 3 or the whole Dragon arc story, it's very important for those who are invested in lore and story to experience these side stories. Some of the side stories, there's very few of them, but they can be a lot of fun and fantastic and full of lore bits. So I do think it's a shame that it's locked behind raids. Now, I do think that raids should have a story. I do think it should be locked. I think an infantile mode could definitely work. The reward would really be the raid story itself and not really too much more past that. At the very least, if you're not going to do that, or if you don't have the time or resources to develop an infantile mode anytime soon, I think that something should pop up in the game after a couple of weeks or after a month of raiding and say, hey, come to our website and check out the Matthias cutscene or something like that, a blog post of some sort directly from ArenaNet.
Yeah, it just feels that. Sorry to interrupt, but it just feels that recently that they've been producing, with the raid 2 again, really great. The raiding content has been top notch. A lot of people have said, the raids are actually exactly what the end game content should be, but they just seem to be mishandling a lot of sort of negativity in the community and sort of feelings in the community. They just, with their PR side, I just don't think they've got it quite right at the moment. And I I will admit that when I played Guild Wars 1 from pretty much from the beginning, I think it was about 3 months after Guild Wars 1 launched, I got into it. But I never really followed it on YouTube. I didn't follow any content creators at all for Guild Wars 1. I didn't follow Guild Wars website. I went to the forums mainly to find out. Obviously, times changed and other things have developed. But do you feel now that obviously with the Reddit forum being so sort of a lot of instant use, it's always on Reddit, you've obviously got the Guild Wars 2 forums, that the dialogue between the player base and the between ArenaNet, do you think that needs some work?
Yeah, I definitely think it does need some work. I would hazard a guess and say there's a good deal of players who do not go to Reddit. Even those who are aware of Reddit and the subreddit, they don't go there for a very good reason. Some people find it to be rather negative in general.
Yeah.
If you're going to air your grievances, doing so on the forums is generally not easy or warranted. And so Reddit becomes this place of, well, I can speak freely here and tell people that I don't like X, for example. So unfortunately, while I do think Reddit is very useful, I think it's very good for particular things, there's people in the community who kind of refuse to go there to keep up on the news. And so I think there should be, I think there is sort of a disconnect there with some players.
And what about you, Artic, as well?
I do follow the Reddit community and what they post, but I personally don't like all the negativity that is on the Guild Wars 2 Reddit. So I'll sometimes look at them, but if I can see that it's going to be a complete rant and it's going to be just destroying the game, I'd rather not actually click that and look at it, just for the reason that I'm trying to not damage the game for myself, because I really do love the game. I really do.
Yeah.
So I'd rather not see all that negative banter of, oh, screw them, they did this wrong, they did this, how dare they, we pay the money and they do nothing. I'd rather not see that. That's not something that I believe personally, and so I just don't want to see that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked in a bit about the sort of the experience of having SAB come in, and a lot of people loved that, and just some of the bad news that came out with the legendaries. So let's talk about another subject that really brings up a lot of different feelings and strong feelings, and that's PvP. Now, Inks, you had some news saying that you've believe that the was it Stronghold isn't going to be worked on from now on. Is that right?
Well, so there was a post in the forums by Grouch. Somebody had asked that what's happening with Stronghold? Are we going to get updates other than champions? Is it going to evolve, new maps, etc.? And Grouch responded that right now, at least right now, with seasons and such, that Conquest is going to be Conquest new and old is going to be the focus of PvP for now, which means he said Stronghold is kind of, I don't have his exact wording, so please go to the forums and look for it, but he said that right now it's basically on hold. Now, this is not, I need to stress this, this is not the same as legendaries being put on hold indefinitely. Nowhere does Grouch say anything like that, just that Conquest is their focus right now. So the Conquest maps and the mode itself is where ArenaNet is putting their focus on PvP for now, which means Stronghold is not going to see any significant updates anytime in the immediate future.
And as someone like Artic isn't, you not classify yourself as a big PvP player, would you?
No, not at all.
So how would you react to this news? Is there any feeling at all?
So I was gonna say that what Inks was just saying was that when they're doing their focus, I actually have been realizing that when we were talking a little bit earlier about like the legendary weapons of their focus of where they're trying to aim, I think they're really trying to make the game much more refined and I I want to say the word better, but I don't think that works entirely. But they're just trying to make the game more fluid, more. I'm trying to think of a way to say that they're trying to make the game so that they're not scattered everywhere. They're trying to collect themselves. So if they're only focusing on conquest, that makes it so conquest can get better. And I wouldn't say Stronghold is in a bad spot right now. I have actually played a couple of games of Stronghold, and I personally like it. So I don't see that they need to make a change on it right now. So while it's not necessarily bad, they can focus on conquest and help make conquest better, and the same that they're doing with legendaries, where they're not focusing on the legendaries right now and focusing on other things. But I think that we will see an improvement in the near future.
Well, yeah, I mean, as someone, I play a fair amount of PvP. I've got to diamond rank the last 2 seasons. I've stopped playing PvP just because I'm not grinding all the way up to legendary. I really don't have the time, not with other things going on. They've really had a lack of PvP maps coming out. You had the Stronghold that came out with Heart of Thorns. That was their big push, saying, we're bringing in a new mode to PvP. All right, you had the deathmatch scenario, which a lot of people didn't like. But even with Conquest, they've brought out Skyhammer was the last map that they brought out. I, for one, am kind of disappointed that they always, for me, when I think back to PvP, I got started about 9 months after the game launched, and I was looking at improving my achievement points. And I remember playing a lot of like hot join PvP, and I remember playing so much on Raid on the Capricorn, which is a PvP map they got rid of. But I don't see why they got rid of it because they didn't want underwater content. I just don't understand why they just don't remove the water and have it as another PvP map. It had a cannon, which was a cool, unique feature that you could fight over. 3 widespread points, 1 in the center and 2 at the sides. Some quite interesting ways, sort of line of sighting a bit, points. And I like that map, and I'm sad that that they haven't brought it back. But if you're saying, the focus can be on conquest right now, it's hard to see what they're doing. Are they going to bring in new maps? What possibly could they work on for conquest mode? I mean, Inks, what do you think? Any ideas what they possibly could be working on if they're focusing not on Stronghold, if they're focusing on conquest? I mean, the only small change that they actually did in the last patch, they actually changed. It was an interesting change actually on Temple of the Silent Storm, where they removed the ferocity buff that would actually give you bonus points for getting kills while that was active. That's now been removed, and it's lots more streamlined. So do you think these are the sort of changes we can expect?
Yeah, I think so a couple of things. Going forward, I think we're going to continue to see seasons refined. Certainly, there's some differences from season 1 to season 2. We have at least 2 more seasons for the rest of this year, as well as there was some problems and complaints about off-season. So I think they'll continue to refine that whole system, as well as I think some of the current maps that are in the game will see small tweaks and refinements. And I think some of the older maps, even perhaps removed maps like Capricorn, could see a comeback or a refinement there. Now, the problem, like you said, with Capricorn was the underwater combat. Some classes are very strong underwater, some are kind of weak, and underwater in general is just not something that is seeing a lot of development time currently. But they could do a couple of things with the map. For example, they could freeze the water, cover in ice, and move the capture point on top of the ship somewhere rather than underneath the water. And then that makes that map a lot more viable to play on.
Yeah. No, I would agree there as well. And, I think with the major problem, going back to what you're talking about, the league's off season, was the fact they removed ranked PvP, and that thrust a hell of a lot of players a wide-ranging group of players in the same MMR, and it was just ridiculous what you were getting, because you were getting a lot of new players coming in that were playing like against pro league players, and it was just incredible. And I think that having a better off-season that would definitely work. And again, Arctic, you're sort of not really a PvP player. What are your views on just the league system? And a little side running joke. I mean, did you actually win a match in PvP this season?
No, I haven't.
Last season we had a running joke because Arctic was stuck in amber, and we always made a little joke about how he just had the one next to his name.
Brutal.
Yeah, but as you know, I've noticed actually for this season that out in the world, I think you might have mentioned to me about this, Arctic, that when you go against world bosses, during that first season, you would have seen a ton of PvP ranks. This season, I haven't seen that as much. When you come up against Shatterer, Tequatl, there aren't as many PvP ranks on players this season.
And I'm not sure what's causing that. I don't really follow PvP too well, so I'm not entirely too positive about this. But I thought that they did make some good changes when they redid the league system, because I remember the first season, it was in December, or was it November?
November, I think it was. November to January.
Yeah, that league season, I remember there was just some weird amount going on with the pips, where there were several games where I would win and I wouldn't get any pips, or there were games where I'd lose and then I'd still get pips. It didn't make sense to me, so I like the way that they naturalized it, and now it makes sense. If you win, you get a pip. If you keep winning, you can get a bonus pip, and if you lose a pip, so it makes sense. So I like the direction that they went with that. But I'm not entirely too positive, since I'm really not a PvP player. I don't know why I don't see too many people playing PvP now, so I'm not entirely too sure. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
I decided for this season you can't make fun of me, so I didn't even play a game. So now I'm not Amber.
What about you, Inks? Have you noticed a lot less players playing PvP? And what's your been experience of the league this season?
Yeah, I haven't really noticed too much that there's a lot less symbols, but if that is indeed the case, it sort of makes a little bit of logical sense in the sense that league seasons were new. In the previous season, that was a brand new thing that players had never experienced. And so I think that alone is enough to draw players who don't normally PvP in to at least try it out to see, what is it about? How does it work? Am I going to enjoy this? Yeah. Now that this is the second season, regardless of the changes for the positive, and I do think that there were a lot of those, some players will just have that bad experience or that bad taste in their mouth, or maybe they experienced and just said, you know what, PvP still just isn't for me. And so, that could be one reason why you see less of them, like in the open world or at boss events, etc.
Well, yeah, I mean, PvP is interesting and how they've been progressing it, and I have no problem with the league system. I like the reward, and you can get this legendary bat piece. I think that's something great for you to strive for. Obviously, they've got the pro leagues. I've been enjoying watching that and seeing, obviously you've got like people like Jebro shoutcasting that, and that's been interesting to watch and see that go on. I think PvP right now, a lot of people are complaining, and they'll say, "Oh, it's esports, etc." I think the problem is, it is kind of hard to watch as a spectator sport, and I don't think they were able to change that just because of the nature of Guild Wars 2 and being quite nice to have like intricate skills, but it's kind of difficult for like the player base, especially if you're watching like an Azura take on a Norn, to actually see the tells of certain skills and for the shoutcasters themselves. But yeah, that's PvP, sort of, some of the state of PvP. And again, it's something that, Stronghold brought in with Heart of Thorns. It hasn't really taken off. They did say that it was going to see how the community reacted, and they would go off on that. Let's move on to another topic. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to bring up? Anything else that you want to talk about? Inks, you got anything to say?
Well, I haven't actually heard Artic and Micah. I haven't heard your reactions to the legendaries being put on suspension.
I mean, I did a great video, a funny video because both of us have got one of the new legendaries. I went for Hope, the pistol. I love that pistol. I love the sound effects from it. And me and Arctic were having a little race because we were both going for. He was going for Nevermore, weren't you?
Yes, and I got it.
We actually got it within about half an hour of each other, and we were like like going that close. Obviously, that was when amalgamated gemstones was a little bit less than what it is now, but it was still fairly pricey. And we both went round and actually helped each other do the sort of events needed and things like that. And I would say that for Hope, and I'd probably say the same for Nevermore. Arctic can confirm this. I really enjoyed getting that legendary. Would you agree on that?
Oh yeah, I had so much fun. I think it made it a little bit more fun that we had like a little bit of friendly competitiveness because every other day I'd see you, I'd like ping something in chat like, "Oh, look what I got." Like I'd ping you and I got, "Oh, look at me. I got 50 amalgamated gemstones." And it just gave us the friendly competitiveness and that made it so much fun. I loved it.
It's like I've got 250 crystalline ingots now, and it's just like that keep going on. So I was looking forward to other legendaries. There are some legendaries, the core legendaries that don't really appeal to me. If you look at things like one of the reasons, the other pistol which you can get, which is Quip, I'm not a big fan of Quip. The same with the short bow. The short bow, which the Dreamer shoots out unicorns, is an annoying weapon, especially if you're like a short bow ranger or constantly pinging it. If you're like got quickness on you, you're just shooting out unicorns at light quick speed, and it's just ridiculous. There are some other weapons, I'd say the Moot, even though it's kind of cool, I'd like to see a different style mace. It'd be interesting just to see a few different takes on weapons. Like Bifrost was a very, very pretty staff. I have Bifrost for my Elementalist, but Nevermore gave you something different, and it was, Nevermore was for more of a like male type staff, for those male professions. And I was hoping that with these new legendaries, we were going to see a different take on some of them, some annoying weapons or weapons that really are a little bit underwhelming. Their counterpart for a Heart of Thorns legendary could be like, for example, let's take something that's really underwhelming, like a Warhorn, which was what's the Warhorn legendary for Corteria? Howler. That could have been something else. They could have great new effects on a new Warhorn, for example. And it's going to be disappointing. I will admit, I'd started preparing for the next legendary weapon for Heart of Thorns, started to build up my crystalline ingots. And now it's like, well, what's the point? The crystalline ingots aren't going to be used for anything else apart from the legendary weapon, so there's no need to them. I felt it was the announcement was handled badly. It was a promise that they brought in with Heart of Thorns. I understand what the issue is. I can see that the problem that they have is developing the precursor scavenger hunt. That is the main issue. If you look at the 4 parts that come with a legendary, the precursor for them and how they're developing precursors is the biggest issue, because there are 2 sections where they have to do like scavenger hunts and go around the world and do event quests, and it requires a lot of testing. They have to come up with a quest that needs to have this component, put that in the game, make sure it drops correctly, and how they're still having problems with like Hope, Nevermore dropping some of these quest things. So I can understand why they've had this amount of time, why they've had so many problems developing the new legendaries. But I just felt the announcement was poorly handled, and again, I give them props for announcing it, but I just felt that they could have done other things. It is a big disappointment, and it is something that it's just going to be a while before we even get some other legendary weapons. You can understand what they're doing. They've moved them onto the Living World team to try and get them out quicker. Maybe Living World was having a few issues, but there is that overall sense of disappointment. And that's not going to go away until maybe we get an announcement about the living worlds and say, well, look, because we moved them onto this team, you're going to get living world on this date. And this is when we'd like to launch. Because we've moved them, living world's going to come out earlier. It's going to be better. It's going to be more polished. You won't have as many bugs, etc., etc. And I think that's what, in the long term, maybe it would be beneficial. But again, I'm just really disappointed. Artic, would you have actually gone for any of the new legendaries if they were coming out?
Yes, I would have actually. I was already thinking about getting Zap as a sword because I really like the way Zap looks. But when we got the new, when Heart of Thorns was coming out and they said they're coming out with new legendaries, I said, you know what? I'm gonna wait to see what the new sword is. I can wait. I wasn't in that much of a rush, so I said, okay, I'll wait. And so it's a little bit of a bum that I can't see that, what the next sword is, so I could go for it. But I agree with you when you say that let's see what they do with Living Story, because I would be one to say, I'm not very cynical, but I would say that the game has been going on a slight downhill recently. It's been like a content drought. A lot of people in our guild specifically have been saying, like, oh, well, I haven't been playing because there's nothing to do, or it's been boring, or something like that. And so it's been an ongoing cycle of a lot of people not playing again. And so it's a little bit upsetting to see that because I love the game. So it just stinks that that's happening. So I'm going to be the one to say I'm okay with them putting a halt on the legendaries if and only if the Living Story will make up for it. So if they really are going to be putting their 100% into making new content, making the game better, making it more streamlined, then sure, you can do that. I mean, eventually I still take the announcement when they say, indefinitely. I still think that they will get to it, but it will take some time. It's not going to be very soon. I'm assuming it's at least 6 months to a year. Maybe I could be wrong. I could be 100% wrong, but I do see that it's going to be a little bit of time for that, and so I'm fine with that if they do give us better story and things to do in the game for people to not say, oh, there's no content, there's nothing to do, it's just boring. So yeah, that's my take on it.
You know what they could have even done is just to sort of counter again this, the negativity that came with it. I mean, one thing I will say, Inks, that you asked them my opinion on this, and legendary weapons are one of those things that they're end game goals that players can spend a lot of time actually going for and working towards, and they'll get the legendary weapon. It's a great feeling when you get that. They're obviously removing that, for a lot of the weapons, and it's great for those new weapons because there's still very few people, like Artic, I'm sure you'll say, there aren't many people with Nevermore, are there?
I've seen a couple, but I haven't seen too many.
And so you've got...
I definitely haven't.
Yeah, you've got that prestige of the new weapons. I would have liked to have seen them say, all right, look, you could have done something like, for example, we're going to be postponing legendary weapons. We're going to put them on hiatus. However, we're going to give the community one more. And they could have done something like, the community will vote for what legendary they do. And they could show off all the legendaries and be like, these are the legendaries that we have, these are the designs of them. We'd like you to vote for which one you'd like to see in-game developed. And they could have just two people in the team do it on the off time, so that's the next legendary brought in. It gives people that engagement. It's generates a bit more goodwill because you're turning it was all very like it's being stopped, and you're getting a short bow which is only usable by two professions, which you announced, you stated when I was listening to your video actually, Inks, on the legendary announcement, and you said that it's only used by two professions, the ranger and the thief, which if you don't actually have, which actually, if you think about the ranger actually uses a staff, it uses an axe, and it uses a short bow, which are 3 out of the 4 new legendaries could all be used by rangers. The thief actually uses the staff. it uses the pistol, and it uses the short bow. So I reckon those legendary developers have been quite pushing towards rangers and thieves, to be honest. But yeah, I mean that would be my overall. I think disappointment. It's kind of negated by the fact I already have hope, and I'm really pleased with hope. I mean, have you got any of the new legendaries?
No, I'm definitely one of those people I was waiting to see a lot of the new legendaries. For example, a lot like Artic, I was waiting to see what the sword would look like,
Yeah.
or perhaps one of the other legendaries. The mace is a big one because I'm not the biggest fan of Moot. And I don't really have a problem with the legendary. It's a disco ball on a music stick, more or
Yeah.
less.
I'm the same. I'm for me, I don't want to see, like, if I had a funky character, then I'd love to see the disco floor footprints. But if you're on a character that's just, you want to have like that sort of sort of immersion, you don't really go see a character like that go around with a big glowing disco ball.
Yeah, so I was waiting to see, some of the other legendaries and kind of make a decision. Do I like the old one or the new one before I try to commit to any one in particular? I do have a pistol. I have Quip, and I made it because it's annoying. It's the sole reason.
Yeah.
So, like, Hope is a much better looking pistol, in my opinion, but I already have one of the pistols. And while someday I might make Hope, it's not an immediate, it wasn't an immediate grab for me. So, I don't know. I've been waiting to see, but now that I know that the short bow is the last one, I'll probably look at the short bow, make a decision, but I think I'll probably make the axe
Yeah, I
first.
mean, Astrolaris looks pretty cool,
Yeah.
and there's not many people I've seen go around with the Astrolaria. But that's the thing, there's quite a bit of prestige to these new weapons, and it's just a shame that they're going to be limited to four. But yeah, there is one thing I would like to actually ask you, because Arctic's obviously in my guild, and we actually spent a long time creating some jumping puzzles in our guild hall and run some guild events. I obviously, they've brought it in with some of the festivals. You get different decorations. Do you feel that? I just wanted to ask your opinion about your decorations and particularly your guild hall right now. Are you happy with this is the new content that you're getting with guild halls? And all these decorations and the fact obviously scribing costs are going down.
Yeah, I really like the idea of the guild hall. I like the idea of decorating it. Our guild is kind of mixed on it. Some people donate a lot of time, effort, and resources into not only upgrading the guild hall, but for decorations as well.
Hmm.
For example, there's maybe 5 or 6 of us right now really working over SAB to make sure we get as many furniture coins that we can get.
Yeah.
My problem comes in when we have these festivals and we get these decorations for the guild hall. Most of those look really fantastic. They're definitely things that I would love to have for the guild hall to decorate with. The problem usually is anything besides the very basic stuff has some astronomical cost to it,
Yeah.
meaning you really have to put in a lot of work and farm or have a large guild who is willing to give over and donate all of their clouds or whatever the other currencies were, snowflakes, for example, to
Mm-hmm.
try and build the trees and the super adventure box stuff. So I love what they've been doing, and I love that aspect of it. I just think that some of the costs for these things are a bit crazy in some regards.
And Arctic will confirm because he was one that was helping out me and our actual other scribe come up with a lot of decorations in there. And before they changed how you could place items in there, we bought a lot of like the planters to actually build some jumping puzzles. And I
Yep.
mean, I would say that the creation of decorations and the placement is pretty fun. You agree on that, wouldn't you, Arctic?
Yeah, and I was actually going to say, I think, for example, this SAB is one of the ways that we know the direction they're going for the new Guildhall decorations and how they want to lower the cost of scribing. For the reason that in SAB now, you have to do a little bit of a mission to go get those furniture coins, and they are time gated by 1 day. But if you do get them, you get a free cloud. And I think that's actually pretty nice because now we're getting decorations in our guild hall that are even though they're just the base component, they still are. We're getting them for free, even though. So I think that is pretty nice on the way that they're starting to lower down the costs. And even during the Christmas holiday, well, Winter's Day, sorry, for that, we needed 200. How many snowflakes was it for one snow pile? I think it was 100 pristine snowflakes.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Or was it flawless?
It was flawless. It was the top end one, yeah.
Flawless, yeah. But they were easy to get. They weren't like hard to get the flawless snowflakes. You just had to open up some of the boxes and you got a lot of flawless snowflakes, and then you could double click the smaller ones to make it into the bigger ones. So I thought it was really actually nice. I think they have been working in a better direction for the scribing costs.
All right,
but we have to wait to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, let me ask this to you again, Inks. We actually hit maximum level. We've actually, in our guild, we've completed everything in the guild hall. Everything's been bought up. So we are now sitting, our Ethereum is capped. We've got a maximum amount of favor, and there's nothing else to do in the guild hall. Do you think that they need to, potentially with the April update, increase the level cap, bring in some new things for the guild hall, or do you think it's okay in where it is right now?
I do think that's something they need to do and need to address. This kind of wraps into guild missions as well, which haven't been updated in...
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know how long.
Yeah.
We do guild missions every week with Bog Otter and Peachy and a bunch of people who are in Maven with me. But we've been doing the same guild missions for literally years.
Yeah.
So I would love to see, and it's not going to come in spring unless they surprise us out of the blue, but maybe in the June-July patch, which is when they said that Living World 3 should be coming out about. I would love to see something added to the guild halls as far as more levels or more things to work on, a new building or something. Definitely. Now, my guild is not at cap yet. We don't have everything, but we have all the major upgrades at the very least, and we are working on some of that other stuff. So, and I think there's other things they can work on as well. I know that there's a big problem with the number of items you can place in a particular area. That's a big issue for creativity, really. So I would love to see a lot of that kind of stuff worked on. The number of items in a particular area, I know that's probably like a technical limitation or something currently. But yeah, I do hope that we see it at some point, because guild halls, I think, is a great idea initially, but I don't want to see it, kind of happen like guild missions and not see updates for very long periods of time. I think that would annoy and irk some people, for larger guilds anyway.
Yeah, we know that obviously they've got a dedicated guild team working on stuff. Obviously, they might be working on a new guild hall right now. I also feel that they need to look at how guild halls operated in Guild Wars 1. And obviously, you'd have guild versus guild. I think that they could bring it back for GW2. And I was talking to a couple of people about an idea where for one section of your guild hall, you'd have like a portal. And in that portal, you could actually, for example, have your GW2, you'd have your arena in there, and that's where you do guild versus guild stuff.
So you mean like a separate arena than the one we have currently?
Yeah, because you can't play guild versus guild in the guild hall right now.
Right.
So do you think that that would have to mean that they would have to bring back like an alliance system again?
Well, they could do. I never experienced too much guild versus guild or PvP in GW1. I mean, did both of you play any guild versus guild matches?
I did, and but I thought it was only in between alliances. So like when you have an alliance, you can guild versus guild inside the alliance.
Well, that could be something that they could develop, because obviously you're in multiple guilds now. I just feel that we've got guild wars, yet we don't have guild wars. If you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
But overall, I just feel that they could just develop guild hall system a bit more. Maybe bring in some new, different ideas for. And again, I think what you said, Inks, maybe bring in another building that would able to bring in stuff. I'd love to see several things in the guild hall. I'd love to see the rest of the crafting stations. I would also love to see a trading post added to the guild hall.
Yeah. So they said, I agree with you. I would love to see all those things. ArenaNet had said before Heart of Thorns released that guild halls were never going to be or not supposed to be full cities. They still wanted people to, be in LA and be in Divinity's Reach, etc.
Yeah.
And so certain things like the trading post, like all of the crafting stations, wouldn't necessarily be added. But I really do believe that's something they should take a second look at. Sitting
Mm.
in LA and sitting in Divinity's Reach, I don't think is as because there's a lot of cities that people just really don't go to very often.
Yeah.
Holbrecht, for example, is generally underpopulated
Mm.
most of the time. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's as big a deterrent as they make it out to be. And for example, there are still a couple of things like leave fractals outside of the guild hall, and so then people will still go there
Yep.
to do that. World versus World, for example, there's a couple of little things. But I think
Yeah.
crafting is just something like you're going to sit and do for any X period of time. I don't see how that really makes a big difference whether I'm in LA or whether I'm in a guild hall. Maybe I'm being
Yeah.
sociable, but map chat in most MMOs is not always a very overall friendly experience in general. People are there to troll each other, spoil
Yeah.
stuff, whatever, general kind of trash talk. Maybe not always, but certainly generally speaking. And so I don't think players would necessarily miss that. Yeah, it might make the game look like there's not a whole lot going on, but I don't because of the way that LA is now laid out, and that's where most players I think go. I think that's the city they mostly go to. um, I don't know that you're seeing that large player density anymore anyway. It used to be that everybody stood on either the bank steps is where they mostly stood in LA
Yeah.
because you're close to the forge and etc. But that's not really the case anymore, and that hasn't been the case for a long time. So I'm not sure that you're really losing a whole lot by letting people have things like a trading post and stuff like that there. I don't know.
Yeah. And I also think that if you look at why other cities are pretty populated, like for example Ratasun, is because the trading post, the bank, and the crafting stations are all fairly
Right.
close to each other, which was where like Holbrecht and the Black Citadel, they're quite far away from to get to the trading post from the crafting stations into Black Citadel. You have to waypoint, go there, waypoint, run back. It's just a lot of effort. Whereas Ratisum, it's all very central, and I feel that guild halls should be more sociable, and they ideally that people would help each other for crafting, for example. So imagine having crafting stations in the guild hall. You would be able to be a bit more able to actually give advice on to other players, and you could help each other out.
And actually, there's kind of a section for it already outside, at least in Lost Precipice. I can't say about the other map because I don't know it quite as well. But
Same.
in Lost
We've got Lost
Precipice, right
Precipice, yeah.
outside your tavern, which is a bit underwhelming, there's these little
Yeah.
tents, these little stalls and stuff set up. And there totally
Yes.
should be
Yeah.
NPCs there or crafting stations, or there should be something there. Right now, they're just kind of empty stalls. And I do think that in the future, they will add NPCs or something there to sell something to you, perhaps, maybe, or let you exchange something.
Mm.
But I mean, that could be one ideal location to put like all the crafting stations kind of in that same area.
Yeah, but it's like if for example, if I'm scribing, then I need some more materials and I buy them on the trading post. Well, where I'm scribing and I don't have access to a trading post in my guild hall, so the easiest place for me to go is the PvP lobby, because the if I go there, then I'm right by the trading post. The trading post is right there. It's pretty quick loading time, and then I just load back into the guild hall, and it's like, and then you have to run back to the scribing station, and it's just so long. I mean, we've got a marketplace. Why is there no trading post
Right.
person?
And
And what
I
about
was
you,
just about
Artic?
to say,
Yeah.
I think people really do like the ease of convenience in the game, and so that's something that no matter how much ArenaNet wants to try, you can't give up how people want to have convenience. So, like for instance, I know a couple people in my guild, and I think you too, Mikey. Whenever you need to use the Mystic Forge, instead of going all the way to Lion's Arch, you just go to the and you'll go there really quick.
Yeah, we'll go to World
port
versus
there as
Worlds, yeah.
quickly as you can. Go to the Mystic Forge, and then that's it. So people really do like the convenience. So having a couple of conveniences added will still, be really nice for people. It's nice to have everything there. And I did actually have a separate question for you, Inks, because you were just saying that you'd like to have NPCs in those stalls. And I was wondering, do you think that the guild halls should just have NPCs there that even if you interact with them, they don't actually do anything for you? They're just going to be there, just like walking NPCs around in your guild hall.
Yeah, absolutely. We me and some guildmates had talked about this when we finally upgraded our tavern. It was a bit disappointing and hollow in the sense that it feels
Yeah,
a lot of the
there's no one
buildings
there.
and stuff feel dead.
Yeah.
Sure, there's a couple of NPCs here and there that either sell stuff or do a particular thing for your upgrades, but the guild hall in general has no real life of its own other than guild members that might come and go inside and out of it. So I would love to see some people inside the tavern or just walking around the guild hall, randomly or something. And maybe they just have random
you could
idle
even buy
dialogue or
them.
something,
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we built the
I
bar
also
and
love-
nobody's in the bar. It's an empty bar.
But I would also love to see, for example, you said about NPCs, you could just as a goal, you could actually spend Ethereum, for example, on buying an amount of NPCs or buying a particular NPC to walk around your guild hall, or maybe have some stories to do with lore, for example. Benefit you, things like that. But I'd also love to see the creation of that you could create points of interest and vistas in your guild hall. Just because I know vistas may be a bit tricky to do, but I'd love to have rather than go, okay, in the top right corner, that's where you have to go, or in the bottom middle left, that's where this person's home is. I'd love for them to have points of interest dotted around the map that you could create and put down, much like you do with decorations. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds fantastic. I had a conversation just last night with a guild member who said he would really love to have a waypoint that you could craft inside the guild hall to place somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
For example,
Yeah.
everything is at that scribing hub for us. You have your daily mining materials. If you want to go to the tavern
Yes,
to
yeah.
get like a bonus, XP or luck or whatever, and scribing is all in that one area. So you really kind of warp into the guild hall and then you run for a period to get there
Run, yeah.
rather than just I'll pay whatever I got to pay, and I place my waypoint right here and let me waypoint into that.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that point. I love to have a waypoint in that middle section as well. And just other places around the guild hall that, rather than spending time running there, being able to place custom waypoints would be pretty cool. And it makes your guild hall feel more like your own and more personal.
Absolutely.
I mean, what else would you like, Artic, in the guild hall? If you could have anything that, for example, is in Guild Wars 2 right now, what would you have?
Oh, that's a difficult question. What would I like else in the guild hall? I mean, I would love the waypoint and point of interest. Those would be really cool. I can see how, especially if what Mike O'Brien said is true and they're spread thin, I could see that as something that would be extremely difficult to do without having a lot of developers on that. But I would actually really like to have the waypoints, especially for the reason that in our guild we love to make jumping puzzles, and so we could say, okay, everybody go to this waypoint, and it'd be our custom waypoint, and we'd block everything else out, and we could just have our jumping puzzle over there, and I think that would be totally awesome.
Whereas right now we have to have someone tag up, and it's like, this is where the jumping puzzle starts, and everyone has to make their way there, and it's...
And we have to have people around there watching and making sure nobody's going somewhere and cheating.
I would love to have an item, a chest or something similar that is interactable that gives you 4 bank slots, 5 bank slots, something just for that chest. And the guild could store stuff in there if they wanted to. In this way, you could place it at the end of jumping puzzles or in some random place,
Yeah.
and those who make it to the end could access it and just take out the reward or whatever was inside.
Yeah, like the guild's personal
Some kind of
That is
reward
insanely
chest, for
or
smart.
example.
something. Yeah, some kind of mini bank or something like that. It could work in the same way that it, even if it has to be even an NPC or something. I think they really could attach technology like that to an item, but either way, some way to reward players for doing, guild hall events or something like that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a great
that'd
idea.
be pretty
Because
sweet.
we do the jumping puzzles in our guild, and so usually we have to have somebody at the end to wait and see who won. But if we have a chest, whoever gets there first can just get it and take out the reward, and they're the ones that won because they got there first. So that's actually really interesting and a very cool idea. That would actually be awesome if it's implemented.
Yeah, and then you wouldn't get this issue that I have, and I'm the person that gives out the rewards. I can only send out 2 within a particular
Right.
time frame because I can get
Yeah.
suppressed for sending the mails
I
out.
would love to see them add tools to the guild hall to make races as well. Some kind of NPC that you talk to that could turn you into a crab or a spider or a bear, and then give you tools that allow you to make some sort of obstacle within the guild hall with like a start and a finish point. And like you said, you guys already make jumping puzzles, so that certainly could be part of a race. But
Yeah.
just little added things like that, so that guilds can hold their own events, or even invite people to hold their own
Yeah.
events inside the guild hall to sort of make it even more popular and fleshed out.
Yeah, because like for example, if that was the case, you could host events on your Twitch channel where people would come along and they'd race and they try to get to the end without enemies killing them, for example, or maybe not enemies, but like they have to go through certain obstacles and they get to the end, they get a chest, and like it really drive a lot of engagement for guilds and people hosting or Twitch channels and getting people to come to your guild hall. It really drive a lot more engagement, like Wooden Potatoes did. When he was having like arena competitions, the issue being with the cap right now on people, and you always get the map is now closing in
Right.
5 minutes, and it's so annoying. So guild halls, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done on them to make sure that they're up to scratch, and I think that the way they are now, there's just a few things they need to work on.
On top of that, I'd love to see that this work in progress being done on guild halls sort of ported over in some examples to your home instance. It's certainly something
Yeah.
underused that didn't ever really see its full potential, I don't think. And I do understand why they went with guild
No.
halls over personal instance, but I think some of that technology or some of those things could be slightly backwards compatible. Why not add some kind of decoration feature to your home instance to make that space
Yes.
more enjoyable for you as a player? Certainly, you have your own personal instances if you get those from Black Lion chests or the trading post, and like that stuff is fun. Like Winter's Day, you could get your own tree, and there's a chest that you can get, like a treasure chest for the collection, etc. So I'd love to see not just the guild halls being fleshed out, but once that's done, see how much of that is maybe backwards compatible to the home instance as well.
That's a very good idea, and I think the instances have had a lot of neglect. You look at one of the cool things that a lot of other games, particularly things like Black Desert Online, and even WildStar, which obviously kind of is like the little baby brother to Guild Wars, that had phenomenal customizable housing, and Guild Wars 2 kind of lacks on that front. Well, I mean, we've covered a lot of different topics. I would like to end and talk a little bit about what you've been up to at Inks. Obviously, you are involved. You're a regular on a couple of other sort of podcasts and things like Guild Gab with Aurora Peachy, Corvus, and who's the other person that
RPG
was on
Shack
there as well?
Alex.
RPG Shack, yes. And obviously you as well with Tea Time with Mighty Teapot, Brazil, and many other guests on there. What are you up to now? Because obviously it's kind of a bit of a dry spell. Even we've had conversations with Wooden Potatoes. It's kind of a dry area for content creators right now. And if you look actually on the Guild Wars 2 website for the partners, which is part of their partner program, over half of them aren't actually producing any Guild Wars 2 content right now. So how are things going for you? What are you up
Yeah,
to?
no, I've definitely, like you said, like a good deal of content creators. I'm lucky, I guess, in the sense that I do some other Guild Wars 2 podcasts that keeps me pretty active and into the news of the community. My personal YouTube channel sees a video every once in a while. I do need to dedicate more resources and time personally to that because there's some guides on there that need updates, ascended armor, materials, etc. Needs an update. I just finished the Ranger Pet Guide not too long ago, and of course I do lots of other little videos, but the focus is really going more on streaming now, which I'm starting actually next week. I'm getting back into that after some personal real life stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, until more news comes out, living world content, etc., I think for a lot of content creators, unless you do like a new show or a podcast like this one, it can be a bit dry
Yeah.
for new content to come up with.
Yeah, like right now, I'm kind of in the middle of creating guides on particular professions on how you can actually break the Defiance bar for creatures because it's something that they don't actually have tutorials for in game. But again, that's kind of a niche area, and yeah, so there's not much news going on as well apart from negative stuff. And I always try and have like a balanced view on things and positive stuff. I mean, what about you, Arctic, as well? Obviously you keep up to date with things. You'd be the classical casual player. What type of content? Keeping up with things. What do you tend to look for?
I'm definitely looking forward to Living World season 3. I'm definitely very interested to see where the story arc's gonna go, what's gonna happen with Glint's egg, everything going on. So I'm very interested in that. And
But I mean, from more of a like community, like sort of people that you watch on,
oh, sorry.
YouTube, Twitch, for example, Reddit. No, yeah, I mean that's the sort of thing I'm looking. What are the things that you'd be looking for from content creators?
So for me, as a casual looking at content creators, I do like to see a lot of funny and interesting videos. Like the one person I do follow on YouTube that I like is Helseth. And whenever
Hmm.
he has like some really cool PvP like outplays or something, or when he has some really funny videos. Like there was one, I think it was a couple months ago, but it was him, and he portaled everybody to his own lord. Did you see that?
Yes, yeah, I remember
I
that.
remember I was
Yeah.
crying laughing. I thought it was so funny. And so whenever he has like really good like PvP outplay videos or something like that, I always like to watch those. And then from a non PvP perspective, I'd just like to see people having fun. I don't think so. I know that the Reddit community is in like a hatred cycle right now, but for people that are on YouTube, and whenever you're bored and you want to watch a video, you like to watch something that's entertaining. So you'd want to watch some happy people, doing something funny that's just going to make you laugh or going to bring you some enjoyment rather than upset you and bring you down. So I'm always looking
Yeah,
for
and
videos that are gonna be funny and make you laugh. Bog Otter usually does that for me. He always has some really funny videos and he says jokes in his streams, so I always like that.
yeah, and I'd agree. There are some, there are a lot of content creators that, as I mentioned, have not producing as much Guild Wars 2 content, and it is kind of difficult for us to create new stuff every day, every week, for example. And obviously, Inks you're putting into going into Twitch, and I've had that experience of trying to stream, and it's trying to get a consistent schedule, and I know how difficult that is. So I wish you the best of luck with the streaming, and as I said, I'm subscribed to Inks's channel. I'll put a link in the description below, so check some of his stuff out. Any final thoughts at all from you guys?
I'm really looking forward to the April quarterly patch. That should hit sometime mid to late April, probably around the 19th, because the PvP season ends on the 18th, and I think SAB is around the same time, 18th, 19th.
Mm,
I
yeah,
assume that's
yes.
when we'll probably get the patch. And while that's not going to add a ton of new content or very little new content, it is supposed to address a lot of the issues that players have with Heart of Thorns, with the map grind, the rewards, accessibilities of adventures, rework of fractal structures, etc., etc. And so, even though that might not be new content, I've put off doing a lot of that stuff in any excessive amount because I've been waiting to see how these are going to change for the better or for the worse. And so that's really what I'm looking forward to, and just seeing how that all shakes out.
And Artic.
I was going to say very similar, that we kind of really just got to wait and see what ArenaNet gives us, especially for content creators, for trying to see of different ways of different things to do and different things to produce. We kind of got to see what ArenaNet's going to give us in the first place and see where they can go and see what they will do. So let's hope that they really give us a good, nice little boost for the April quarterly update. And if not, and maybe that I think mainly the impression is that the April quarterly update is going to be not on the huge side. It's going to be mainly like updating and adjusting things. So maybe then in June or May, I think it's June, when they're going to do the summer quarterly update.
Yeah.
And I think that's when Living Stories 3 is going to be coming out. Around then, maybe then a lot of the new content will be coming. And that'll really help clear out the whole content drought. And I think that would be awesome for the game.
Yeah, and I think from my own personal viewpoint, let's see what happens in April, what we get. We might get some surprises. I think we're going to see, I think we will see the influence of Mike O'Brien as the game director. Funny thing, actually, as returning game director, because he was actually game director for Guild Wars 1. So it will actually be interesting to see how he, what his own personal stamp on things are. And just generally see how things are looking going forward. But thanks very much, guys, for being part of the podcast today. So thank you again to Artic.
Oh, thanks for having me on here. I appreciate it.
And a big thank you to MMOInks for stopping by as well.
Thanks very much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And if any of you guys that are listening want to put anything in the comment section, if you have any thoughts on anything we've discussed, it'd be great to hear from you and to reply to you guys. So feel free to leave any comments in the section below, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.